Hi, welcome to this free video drum lesson from drumstheword.com. In this video I want to show you the various different types of bass drum techniques that you can use. As a beginner, when you first start playing, it's difficult to know how the bass drum is supposed to be played and controlled because it's quite a difficult part of the drum kit to control, being the furthest away from the brain and not as obvious as the hands. So usually the foot is the last thing that beginners learn how to play or how to use in this case. Bass drum technique remains in this like mysterious fog for years and years until one day somebody shows you the different ways you can play it and you realise, oh, it's not very complicated. It's just hitting a pedal with a spring with your foot, but obviously doing it pretty well. Now there are lots of different types of bass drum techniques out there in the world, but really I'm going to focus just on two for this video. They're called the heel down technique and the heel up technique. The reason I want to focus on those two is because they're used by the majority of drummers out there, including myself, so it makes it nice and easy for me to be able to teach you them rather than try and teach techniques that I'm not familiar with. But like I said, there are other techniques other than this, but what I find what happened with me anyway, is that when I first started playing drums, I was just using the pedal, and over time my body found a way to play, for example, two notes really quickly. And I later discovered that this technique was actually the heel up technique, but my body had worked it out for itself. And I get that with a lot of drummers who've been playing for a few years that were never officially taught, is that their body works out a really cool way to play two notes, and then you can sort of usually relate to it to one of the techniques out there. Actually, then you can give it a label. Oh, I play heel up technique, or I play heel down, whatever. They're all slightly similar to each other, using slightly different movements. But don't worry too much about learning the science behind these techniques. If you just want to play drums and just keep playing the bass drum, your body will find the way eventually. But like I said, this is quite a useful way to focus the technique and get pretty good at it at an early stage. So let's crack on then first with the heel down technique. So as the name suggests, with heel down, the heel of the foot is down, i.e. the whole foot is flat on the pedal, and you just simply tap the bass drum pedal like this. You're tapping your foot on the floor, or on the pedal in this case, and there's no real science to it. It's not a particularly complicated movement. The leg stays down, you stay rested on the stool. I'm not wobbling from one side to the other, I'm just tapping my foot. And it's used by a lot of jazz drummers, for example, who like to play quietly, because this technique lends itself to be able to play really quietly. You know, I'm not using any big muscles, not my leg, for example, my thighs, my hips. I'm just using the ball of my foot to gently tap the pedal. So you can play really quietly with this technique, which is useful for some styles of music. You can also play loudly and quite fast and do doubles. But what I find with this technique is that it will start to burn the shin muscles. With this technique, you're using a muscle in the leg that doesn't get used very often, the shin muscle, and so you have to develop that muscle in order to get really good and quick at it. When you first start and you're playing for a lot using this technique, you find that your shin will start to burn. That's a good thing. You're developing that muscle, and it will get stronger over time. But it does create a bit of a barrier between when you first start using it and when you want to get really good at it. As in, it takes a little bit of time for your muscle to develop that shin muscle. But it is possible. And it's probably the easiest of the two techniques to learn to start off with, because like I say, you're not doing anything complicated with the foot, you just foot flat on the floor. And what you want to try and feel when you're doing this technique, and same with the heel up technique as well, is you want to learn how to use the spring of the pedal to your advantage. I'll explain this properly more in the next technique, but really in a nutshell, when you throw down the beater against the head, it's got to feel like when it bounces back off again, that you've thrown a ball down and it's bounced back up, and the bounce back up is automatic because the spring does it for you. If you put the beater here, it springs back. The spring is really doing this movement, this direction for you. So it feels like this is a ball and this is the floor or wall, for example, and you're bouncing the ball against the wall, and the initial throwing against the wall requires the foot movement, but then what you do is you learn over time to learn how to use the spring to bounce the ball back to you, and that allows you to play faster. I'm making it sound more complicated than it is. It's one of those things that the body is very, very good at working out for itself without fully understanding the movement behind it. It happens so quickly. It's a sensation. It feels like I'm bouncing the ball. If I try and play this pretty well for you, I'm not very good. I'm actually left-footed, but excuses. When you're bouncing the pedal like this, after a while, it feels like the the beater is weightless. It feels like you're just bouncing the ball. Let me explain this properly to you in the next technique, because I think I'm about to do a better job of it using the different mechanics of the heel up technique. But for now, this is the heel down technique, and yeah, nothing to it really. So with this technique, the heel is up in the air, unsurprisingly, hence the name. But I don't want you to think that it's always up in the air. You want to be stable on your stool as much as possible. And if the bass drum feet aren't doing anything complicated, then they want to be rested on the floor, because your legs are going to ache. They're going to start to really burn after a while because you're constantly on tiptoes. You also have to just naturally lean to one side by doing that. And you put a bit of tension on one side of your body, and you don't want these things happening. You can get away with it, but ideally you don't want to be tense in any way. So after each stroke, you want to make sure the whole leg rests on the floor as much as possible. If you're playing lots of notes in a row really close to each other, then that might not be possible. But there's going to be a section in the song where you can then rest your leg, and I encourage you to do so. So don't be up on tiptoe all the time. Is my first big tip for this technique. And what you do for a single stroke, the knee comes up and then the knee comes down. So you get one stroke with the leg. So you can see here, if you look at this top video here, my leg is coming up and down. It's not so much the leg that's doing the note, but I'm exaggerating it slightly here, giving it a powerful stroke. And you can see that the heel comes up and then down again. So it's like a piece of string is attached through my kneecap all the way down to my ankle. And as I pull up my knee, the ankle comes up with it. And when I lift the whole leg up, the front of the foot's kind of loose and it comes off the pedal just enough for the beat to come back, and then the whole leg comes down for the whole note. Now, I've made it sound more complicated than it is. When I teach this technique to pupils at home, they're then trying to do this and then go from this position up here. They're then trying to play the pedal like that. It's one movement. And what happens when on the way down is that the ball of the foot comes down first and then the heel comes down second. So you're kind of rolling down the pedal, but not like that. That's exaggerated rolling. Again, it's just one motion, and you don't want the heel to hit the floor hard, but it feels like it's part of the note. And you're using the weight of the leg to give you a bit of power. And you just got to play around with it. As soon as it starts to feel comfortable, you know you've got the right movement. It's not complicated. It shouldn't be a weird, complicated set of muscle movements. It's just your leg coming up and down, your ankle being relatively nice and loose, the front of the foot staying attached to the pedal, which is important at this stage, and the ball of your foot stays attached to the pedal, and that's it really. I think you just got to watch this a few times and give it a go. So if you're playing a drum beat, you'd be playing single notes like that. The leg's being used. So this technique lends itself to playing doubles quickly with one foot really, really well. This is why I like this technique so much. It's why I use this most of the time in my playing. It's because I can tie in the two techniques, the heel up technique with the single notes, and then this quick double note, which have been called various things. I haven't really got a name for it, but it's this. We're able to play two notes really quickly with each other, and it's related to the heel up technique. So the best way to explain it is that it's basically, think of it as one movement, and what you're doing is you're flicking the pedal into the second note. So the first note is flicked, and then the second note is just followed through with the full weight of the leg. So for the first note, your leg comes up, as in you're doing a heel up technique, single stroke. That note there, when you play it slowly like this, you can't really see the bouncing of the beater, but I'm going to have to show you slowly to start off with and then speed up. But this note here is then going to bounce back, and then the whole leg is going to come down for the second note. So that first note is played with the front of the foot, and you're kind of going to flick it, and then you're going to time it beautifully well, so that on the second note, while this is coming back, your whole leg is then going to come down for the second note. So slowly, it kind of looks like this, although it doesn't when you speed it up, if you know what I mean. You're going to come up, beat's going to come off the head, you're going to strike, the first note is going to bounce off, then the whole leg is going to come down for the second note. So if you look at my knee up here, for example, it's only doing one movement. It's coming up and down, which is why I said it's a one movement stroke. It should feel like one movement. You're getting two notes on the bass drum for one simple movement. The knee is coming up and down. I'm not doing two notes. I'm not doing two ups and downs with my knee. That's two single strokes. I'm now trying to play two notes with the knee coming up and then the second note with the knee coming down. So as you speed it up, if you look at this knee up here, for example, you can sort of see how I get 2 notes from coming up and down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And then there's a point, and I've kind of skipped over that speed point here, where this around there starts to become a bounce. And you can see what I mean about this movement turns into this movement automatically by the spring of the pedal, is you're kind of flicking that first note then coming down. You've got to time it with practice so that you catch that second note and then come down with the whole weight of the leg on the second note. So it's around this tempo, very hard to say, and each pedal is different depending on how tense the spring is. Around this sort of tempo where it starts to feel like you're bouncing the note. But to start off with, if you want to practice it this way, dum, dum, feel really mechanical, feel like a robot to start off with, just to see the 2 movements. Make sure your knees coming up, then your knees coming down, and of course you won't play it this way at this speed. If you're playing 2 bass drum notes at this speed in the song, you'd play 2 single strokes. But you have to practice this technique in order to get it faster, turn it into muscle memory, then you can play fast. So I hope you can see how it works. You can see that my foot naturally slides up the pedal on the second note. That's simply the way it works. It just when my leg comes up, my foot is further back, and then when the whole leg comes down, the foot slides. I've seen drummers use their bass drums where they slide the heel like this, which I can't do. I can't do it that way. But you'll find that, as I said at the beginning of this video, is that depending on what technique you naturally started using when you first started playing drums, is you might find that you learned that way, or you might find that you learned that way. I've seen drummers do this technique. Here we go. Can't do it now. Like that. They call that the heel-toe technique. I'm not doing it very well. Oh, I find that so hard. That's another heel-toe technique. We won't go into that in this video because it's not as common as the heel-up technique. But just be aware there are other ways you can do this. Anyway, back to this flick point. So this is the crucial point of the technique. This is the bit you need to sort of concentrate on practicing. How you get from this position into this position using the spring of the pedal to help you. If you don't learn how to bounce the beater, then you're only going to get so fast. Your leg can't do it by itself. It needs the spring to help it play those 2 notes closer and faster together. But that's basically it. Practice doing this slowly. First note with the front of the foot. The knee comes up. You play the first note. So the knee comes up first. Play the first note if you're doing it slowly. And then, obviously, to go from here to here, the front of the foot has to come off the pedal slightly so that the whole leg can come down and hit the second note. If you don't, then the beater stays on the head. So you have to lift your foot off the pedal for it to come back to get the second note. So from here to here, here, here. And as you speed up, what I recommend you do, by the way, is play 2 notes and then rest. Learn to rest the leg in between those doubles, because that's good practice to teach you how to rest that leg. You don't want to be, which I can't do very well with my right foot, I'm actually left-footed. I can't do very well with my left foot either today, but there you go. You don't want to have the leg up in the air all the time. You start to ache. You only be able to practice it for a few minutes. So practice doing quick doubles and then resting the leg. Make sure that whole muscle rests. You'll be able to practice for far longer. You'll also learn the technique probably because your leg won't be straining and it won't be creating new movements in the leg in order to compensate for that straining of a muscle somewhere. Think about that sort of space between notes when you first try it. Okay, so I hope that made sense. I hope you find that useful. You can email me if you've got any more questions about that. Maybe I'll go over some other techniques in some other videos. But for now, this is all you really need to understand, the 2 techniques, the 2 most popular techniques: heel down, heel up, and then playing doubles, heel down, and using this slide technique for the heel up technique. And that should do you pretty well. So until next time, happy drumming to you.